Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. So today I want to talk about Visions of Cody by Jack Kerouac. So with Visions of Cody, I would say that this book represents both Jack Kerouac's best book and his worst book at the same time. If you can even call it a book, it's that out there. And this book was published after Jack Kerouac's death, so it never saw the light of day during his lifetime, as a published work. And it's a very difficult book to explain, because what it is in short, it's a non-linear character study of Neal Cassady. And Neal Cassady, his name is changed to Cody in this book. And when I first picked up this book, I thought it was going to be a very in-depth analysis of Neal Cassady himself. And it is to some extent, it talks about things that happened in his life. I recognize some of the things they talk about based on things I've read in other books. But it's more of a study of Neal Cassady's America. It's a study of the America that Neal Cassady lived in, as Jack Kerouac saw it. And it's not a straight narrative at all. It's all over the place. It jumps around to different memories that Jack Kerouac has about Neal Cassady, descriptions of things that he saw in America, things that they saw together. And it's what this book is. I mean, half of the book is, just straight narrative that Jack Kerouac wrote. But the other parts of the book are transcripts of conversations between Jack Kerouac and Neal Cassady. So it's a very strange book in that sense, where it's conversations, written as just dialogue like that, and then it's narrative, if you can call it narrative, of what Jack Kerouac wrote. And what this book really was, when Jack Kerouac was writing on the road, he began experimenting with his writing style known as spontaneous prose, which was ultimately influenced by letters that Neal Cassady sent to Jack Kerouac. And that's what we saw in On the Road. And this book, most of what this book was written a couple months after On the Road was originally written. So I feel like Jack Kerouac kind of perfected that spontaneous prose style in this book. And spontaneous prose is basically stream of consciousness, but it's just to another level. It's just basically just taking raw thoughts and putting them onto paper with very little editing or thought about what you're saying, just getting thoughts and just putting them on paper and just letting kind of the words write the writing itself. And a lot of the influence of that comes from jazz and bop music, because that's what was very popular at the time. So this way of thinking, this just kind of sporadic stream of consciousness, just letting things flow, was really the way that art and music and writing was kind of that's what direction it was headed at that point in the late 1940s or early 1950s. So this book is a good representation of pure just stream of consciousness writing. But I think what makes this book really interesting is that the way that On the Road was influenced by the writing style of Neal Cassady, Visions of Cody is, I would say, more influenced by the speaking style of Neal Cassady, because Neal Cassady had a very interesting way of speaking, and that's why his letters were so interesting and so influential to Jack Kerouac. So Jack Kerouac kind of took the speaking style of Neal Cassady, just rambling, stream of consciousness talking, and put it into words. And you can really see that, because when you see the conversation, the transcripts of things that Neal Cassady said, you can see that the parts in the book that are not transcripts of conversations, it's written very similar. It's a very similar way of talking, where it just jumps from thought to thought. You don't really quite know what's going on all the time. A lot of times I'll read a couple pages and I'll just be like, what the heck did I just read? I'll go back and reread again and I still don't understand. And I think that's kind of the point of it. It's just raw, pure thoughts put on paper. The reason I think it's one of his greatest works is because it's just so original. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think anything like it has been written since then. But it's also his worst because it's incoherent. It's just all over the place. It's not a linear story. I feel like when you hear like a non-linear narrative, you think it's still going to be somewhat coherent. But this is so non-linear that it's not even, I don't think, a book at this point. It's just a collection of various thoughts, various ideas, just various things. Like, you can just pick this book up whenever and open to any random page and just start reading. you don't have to read this from start to finish to read it. I mean, you're not. It's hard to explain because you could read it from cover to cover, or you could just pick it up in the middle and start reading, and you would have the same experience. You take away the same things from it. It's just a very strange book that I've never seen anything like it before. And I would say that this book is probably exists at the fringes of what's comprehendible, what's understandable. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because they were definitely on drugs for a lot of this. A lot of these transcripts of conversations, they were definitely on drugs. They're definitely very, very high, and they were just not really thinking when they were talking. And the stuff that Jack Kerouac wrote, that's not the conversations. You get a similar vibe that he was just kind of out there. He just put himself as far out there mentally as he could and just started writing. And one famous criticism of Jack Kerouac's writing is that his writing is typing, not writing. I think this book is the best representation of that, where it's just words. It's just typing. It's just putting stuff out there, putting stuff on paper with very little thought about what's going down. And yeah, I think that's really the best way to explain it. And there's not really much real narrative that I can discuss about this. I mean, some parts it goes into things where you kind of understand what's going on. It talks about different trips that Jack Kerouac went on, different places he went, conversations he had. But it's not really a book that I can talk about different parts that I like, parts I didn't like, because the whole thing is just this conglomerate of incoherent rambling. And I think that's really the best way to describe Visions of Cody. It's not a must-read, I don't think, for anyone. I mean, if you liked On the Road, if you like Dharma Bums, if you like Big Sur, you're not going to like this book. This book is really just for, I think, trying to form an understanding of Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy, just trying to understand the language and the writing of the Beat Generation. Besides that, I don't think it's really noteworthy for an average reader to want to read, but it's interesting that it exists. It's definitely the most unique writing that Jack Kerouac did. It's definitely, I think, the epitome of, in a good way, the spontaneous prose style that Jack Kerouac developed. You see it in its most raw form. And it's interesting in that sense, just to pick it up and see, how far Jack Kerouac's able to take that writing style. And yeah, that's Visions of Cody by Jack Kerouac.